What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of For the Love of the Game. I'm Tommy Stiles. Got my good buddy Turner Riddle with me, and today we are joined by IFBB Pro, owner of Crushing Limits Coaching, Chris Santamaria. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you guys for having me. Absolutely.
Yeah, Chris. So, I'm sure we'll get into your backstory and your journey. I know it's been a long road. I've done a little bit of, I followed you for a little bit on and off. And this year with, I think you did a few pro qualifiers before you got your pro card at 2023 North Americans.
Yep.
But we'll probably go back further to, take me back to when was your first pro qualifier?
Man, let's see. It was 2014 Nationals in Miami.
And how many did you do until you got your pro card this year?
I did 3 this year, and I did 16 pro qualifiers in total.
Damn. 16 pro qualifiers. So for everybody listening that thinks it's just a do a show, and then get your pro card, it's for a lot of people, that's not the path you're going to walk. So now jogging back to that, I know you had IBS.
Yep.
Irritable bowel syndrome, for those that don't know. And then ulcerative colitis came on in what, 2013?
13. Yep, exactly.
Okay. So I first read that, like, when you got diagnosed with that, was it just they were unable to get a hold on it and you lost a bunch of weight and you couldn't eat food and bodybuild, really?
Yeah, so it was crazy. I mean, it was crazy. I actually, this is something great for the viewers. It took me 10 years to win a class win. So obviously things are different now. Turner goes way back too, where it's like bodybuilding used to be fucking competitive. It used to be so competitive where it was just like winning a state title was like a pretty big deal.
Right.
So I just got my first win at Atlantic States in New York, and I started to notice like a little bit of blood when I go to the bathroom, and I was like, maybe this is a fluke. And you guys know, like, to be the alpha male, you're just like, you just brush it off, right? You're just like, oh, this is a fluke. Like, there's no way anything could happen to me, right? And then it happened again, I think, at about 1 week out. And I was like, okay, noted. Like, this is something I'm definitely going to have to address. But still, just being bodybuilders and just being in that mindset, we're just like, well, the show must go on. Like, I'll handle this after the prep, right? Well, as soon as I flew back, I wasn't feeling right. When I got back, the first, Sunday is typically, like, you guys know, like, it's an eating day. You want to try some of the stuff that, you've been deprived for weeks and months. And I couldn't even do that. Like, breakfast didn't really sit right. And I remember I went to the Mall of America that day. I'm in Minnesota, by the way. And the most I could eat was like a small cup of fruit. And I mean, even that was like, sent me to the bathroom. So I knew something was off. I tried going into work that Monday. I do phone sales as well, like, for a living. And that Monday I had to call in sick. Basically, I went home for a half day, and I ate, of course, chicken and rice when I got home. And I was basically in the bathroom till about midnight. So I started to get pretty concerned. And part of a long story short, my parents actually had to drive up from Rochester. It's about an hour south of Minneapolis. And they had to physically, like, hoist me up out of bed. Both, mom and dad are on my shoulders. They're literally picking me up to the vehicle because I was so weak. I had lost, a tremendous amount of weight, and I was obviously dehydrated already. We went to the Mayo Clinic that's in Rochester, and once the doctor team had seen me, there was like a team of like 10 different, specialists and interns, going through their fellowship. And my doctor came in and she said, like, this is like the worst case of ulcerative colitis I'd ever seen. And she showed me an image of it. It literally looked like Swiss cheese. I mean, you could see the gaping holes like throughout my entire colon. So it was pretty scary to say the least.
Yeah, that is I'm familiar with it just from working with some clients. So you get through that experience. How soon until you're back in, you know, because I'm sure your mind is like, how do I get back to bodybuilding, right? Like, is that, yeah.
Yeah, it was really, I mean, being in the hospital, I was in the hospital for 8 days. In that 8 days, I lost 50 pounds, 50.
Right.
So it was insane. I mean, it was like a magic trick. You know, I came in, I was on top of the world from just winning, you know, and I think there was 23 guys in my class in the light heavy at Atlantic State. So it was like super competitive. I had people coming up to me, judges, and they're like, you know what this means? Like every winner of Atlantic States, like they turn pro. Like, are you doing junior nats? Are you doing nationals? Like, what are you doing? So like I got my first win. I'm on top of the world. And now I've basically disintegrated to nothing. And I got out of the hospital and I stepped on the scale with clothes on and I was 150 pounds.
Oh man.
Yeah. So it was frightening. I mean, it's like I looked in the mirror and I mean, everything was gone. It looked like I had never touched a weight before.
Right.
So, and at that time, it was really the only time, like, yeah, I had the IBS stuff, which, you know, of course isn't easy, but other than that, you know, I had never really faced any adversity before. So this was kind of like a wake up call, you know, and I basically had to make the choice because you guys see it, you know, all the time. You see it every day, every week, whether it's family members, clients, people, you know, everyone wants to play the victim, right? And it's like you have that crossroads and you have to make a choice. And the choice is basically you're going to play the victim. You want people to feel sorry for you, woe is me, or you have to choose to basically rise above. And that's what I chose at that point.
So that was like
Well,
your defining moment. You're at that you're at that crossroads and you just decide this isn't gonna define me.
Yeah, I mean, I literally had decided, I mean, I'm in the hospital bed and I'm like, I'm starting to think like, okay, work called, I don't have a job anymore. I've just been told I was unfit to work. I've been put on bed rest the entire summer. So for 3 months, I had to go live with mom and dad because I couldn't, you know, it was hard to walk basically. And I'm like, what am I going to do? Like financially, I mean, it's like obviously competitive bodybuilding. I'm like, how am I ever going to get this back? You know, because nothing serious really ever happened to me before. And that's when I decided I had a conversation with one of the doctors and I asked him, I said, honestly, like, what do you think, man? And he's like, I think you should bodybuild. So, which is, you know, not typical of your normal doctor. And that really shocked me because I had kind of assumed that he's just going to say, you know, like, it's probably time to hang it up. Right. So that was basically a huge defining moment for me. And that's when I decided, like, I'm coming back from this. Like this is definitely not how I'm going out.
what did the comeback look like? Like start us from, you know, make a long story short or whatever, but like from that 50 pounds down, looking at yourself, what did it look, but what did it look like on the way back?
That's a great question. So, like I said, I had to stay with mom and dad. Like they were, my mom would literally bring me down the meals, like go down the stairs because I had the basement. And for the first like 3 or 4 days, I couldn't even go upstairs. Like I didn't even have the strength to go upstairs. I basically had enough strength to like hobble over to the toilet, take care of business, and then crawl back into bed. And, you know, little by little, you know, it was like, okay, I can do one meal a day. And of course, you know, after a huge flare up like that, everything makes you sick. So with colitis, it doesn't matter what the food is, it's a flare. So like plain chicken and rice, nothing on it, sick. and I basically just had to like work my way up to getting to that 5-6 meals a day. I can tell you this, so I had 3.5 months off the gym, basically no activity, no cardio, no nothing. And I moved back up to the cities. I was training at LA Fitness at the time, and it was like one of those hot Minneapolis days where it's like super humid, super hot. It was probably like 95 degrees out. And again, I had opened up social media, so I didn't have for years just because I hated it. So now people know that I won. So that's the last thing in their mind is, oh, we got a winner here. He did this big thing. He won. It's 95 out. I'm in sweats. I got a hat on. I got my headphones. I got a hoodie because I'm so embarrassed. Like, I'm like, man, I hope no one's going to see me. Like, I chose one of the LA Fitnesses I don't go to. I go in the gym. No lie. I couldn't squat just the bar, 45-pound bar for 5 reps. And people were looking at me and they're just like, what is this guy doing? So I try a set. I only get 5. I try another set. I get like 3 reps. And like, I'm kind of just like looking around. I'm just embarrassed. I'm just like distraught. I went over to the leg press, no weight on it. Same thing. I just did like, I could only handle like 4 or 5 reps. I shut it down, went home, and I came back the next day. So long story short, it was a crazy road back, but it's just like, it's just like when you start bodybuilding, right? You can only curl 20 pounds. 2 weeks later, you can curl the 25s and so forth. It's just my starting point because of being so depleted and so anemic and lost that much weight. It was like even below where a normal person would start, right?
Right. So now, or on that journey back, were there things that you could not eat, and you kind of finally found those out, and then like just said, okay, well, whatever it's, I can't eat these because those are going to mess me up or take me back. What does that look like?
Yeah. So even, and I'll be honest with you guys, like even today, I mean, I'm struggling today. Like every day is basically almost like an experiment. So the only season I can use without being like punished or, have a lot of problems is salt. I can't use anything else. So like I do follow a low FODMAP diet. So like my biggest triggers are like onion and garlic. Like those 2 things, and like peppers will just destroy me. So it is tough to kind of eat out. Obviously, you want to be in your social settings, and I'm married. My wife Stephanie, she's a pro, so she's a big foodie. So as far as like there's nothing really other than like the basic stuff. Obviously, I don't eat any dairy. I'm sensitive to gluten, but luckily I can eat red meat. So like steak, that's probably my favorite meal, like steak and rice. As far as the carbohydrates, rice is really the only carb I can eat like safely. So I'll do like rice, of course, which I love, cream of rice. Carbolin doesn't really give me any issues, but I pretty much will stick to those products.
For life.
For life. Yeah.
So was there any time in that where you were like, man, I'm not gonna do this. It's too hard. I mean, I know the doctor told you should bodybuild again, so I'm sure that affirms you in your mind that like I'm gonna make this happen. But like, what I'm like some dark days. What were those like? Where you're just like, man, what the fuck? What am I doing? Like, why am I doing this to myself?
There was never a point where I was ready to quit bodybuilding, but there was definitely some dark days. I'll tell you that. Like when you have, so if you fast forward a little bit, on New Year's 2019, I had my entire colon and my rectum removed. Everything is gone. So, and then they put an ileostomy bag. So I have this poo bag that's on my stomach. So every time I look down, it's there. And you guys know how we have body dysmorphia and how, self-conscious and critical we are. Well, I mean, it gave me firsthand view of what it's really like to, you know, have a bag. And you always think like people are looking, or like, you know, can you see that through the shirt? And it it's definitely one of the worst things you can go through as a person. I mean, it's aside from bodybuilding, I mean, what it does to your ego and stuff. And then when they take the bag off, you have a reversal surgery. So it's called the reversal. So they take the bag off, they take what's left of your small intestine, and they stretch it out to make a J. So it's called a J pouch. So like, I don't have a J pouch, and I'll get to that story. But when you have that, your transit time as far as eating is basically it's extremely quick. So it's sometimes I feel like a time bomb where it's like, okay, I got to eat, but I can't eat because I have to be very close to the bathroom. And it's not like it's like, you know, like when you have a colon and rectum, like, oh, I can hold it. I'll just wait. You know, I'll just get to the next bathroom or the next stop. There is no next stop. Like when you eat, a lot of times, like, you know, like we're watching shows down here, and me and my wife, and you just have to laugh about it. When things are that bad, you just have to laugh.
Right.
So like, I eat so fast and she eats so fast. By the time she's finished, but by the time she's halfway through her meal, I have to stop. I got to pause, and I'm like, I got to go. So I hit the bathroom, and it's like, yeah, it's annoying, but you know, she puts up with it. She's supportive. So it's you have to, when I go out, you have to be very strategic. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, for sure. I guess that kind of you key in the for the love of the game right there. Like no matter what, you just keep doing it, right?
Yeah, I mean, thinking back to like my worst time, you know, a lot of times the way I can explain it, if you think back like 10, 15 years, you know, you'd see those commercials or the jokes where they're just like, you know, you have your coffee and you go to the bathroom to relieve yourself, right? And, you know, we think 20 years ago, you know, dad would go pick up the newspaper or magazine, go to the bathroom, and it just like that was a time of like the bathroom was like a safe place, right? For us, that for people that have the surgery, it's not a safe place. Like it legitimately will cause fear, anxiety, depression for some people. Like so much time is spent in the bathroom. When I had the reversal surgery, I wish I was exaggerating. They had me keep track, and I had to report to the nurse how many times I was going. I was going 40 and 50 times a day. 50 times. I mean, it's like you don't even leave the bathroom. By the time you're done, you have to go again because there's no control like without a colon.
So like the digestion process of the food, like, I mean, the amount of, I don't know. That's what I'm asking you. Like, are you still eating the same, maybe not the same amounts, but like, we'll just say the average bodybuilder that's 250 pounds, like, are you still eating the same amount that an off season or an in contest prep competitor would be eating at that time? Or is it more, is it less? I wouldn't think that, like, is your body still digesting at the same rate, or does it pick and choose?
Yeah, great question, man. So I'm eating a little bit less than I used to eat on a typical contest prep when like things were in remission, like before the surgeries. But I can tell you too, and I've talked with a bunch of doctors and friends when we talk about it. And it's a known fact. Like I know what goes in is not fully being absorbed.
Right.
There's no way around it, because when I went in for the second round of surgeries, which I'll tell you guys about, they removed, I only had like 2 inches of my small intestine left. And that had to stretch out. So, you know, obviously you get your nutrients and everything, your chemicals and everything absorbed through your small intestine. Well, I basically just had a tiny portion of that. So, and I know, to be graphic, like sometimes after I take my pills in the morning for meal one, you know, I'll go to the bathroom a few times and I'll see pills in the toilet that are like full of caps, like full of powder. And I'm like, huh, I guess I'm not absorbing that today, like,
Right.
it is sort of a double-edged sword. I would hate to say anything's an advantage with this, but it's like a lot of the times I'll eat, a cheat meal of this and that. Saturday is typically just a cheat day for me. It's basically just what can I get in and what can I absorb without getting sick, without getting
Right.
stopped in my tracks. And,
Right.
I'll wake up the next day and I won't be up an ounce, and it's like, all right, that was cool. But at the same time, it's like, well, how much of that did I really absorb?
Yeah, I'm sure that makes prepping and having the perfect look pretty damn hard.
Yeah, at first, I think like most people, you just kind of, you're in a state of denial.
Right.
And I look back at some of my best looks and I'm like, just like you guys, I know I could be just a little bit better. I know I can beat that guy. But it's like when it came time to carb up, whether it's just a weekly cheat or whatever, or carbing up the day before the show, it's a totally different ball game.
Oh yeah.
And the frustrating part, when I finally accepted it, I'm looking at my clients that are like, we all have the free clients that it's just like, you could do no wrong. And I'm like, if I tried to do some of the stuff I have my clients do, that would never work for me.
Yeah.
So it is definitely a tough, juggling battle with the food and how much can I really push and how much is getting absorbed.
Tommy, I know you had a question.
Yeah, so I know 2019 you have the surgery, and then does that bleed into 2020 where there's more surgeries?
So yeah, so basically it's the first round of surgeries was a 3-part. So you have the colon removal, New Year's. They wait 3 months typically so that things calm down. That's the reversal surgery, so they take the bag off. I had a 3rd surgery in October. This is 2020 now. And that was to remove a tremendous amount of scar tissue from the abdomen. Now, fast forward, so like basically after that year, it was more so just like proving it to myself. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong or any, this and that. And just like when I had my first flare up, I was like, I'm coming back from this. Like I'm gonna get the pro card. Like this is not gonna slow me down. So in 2021, I came back. Everything was pretty smooth considering. So I did the Wisconsin Brew City. I won the overall to qualify because it had been a few years now. And then I went on to do more national shows than Pro Qualifiers. And I won the middleweight class at Masters Nationals in 2021. And then the top 4, of course, turned pro. I was denied a top 4 spot. And then if we fast forward, just another typical day, it was January. And we went to my wife's, her boss's work party, came home, getting ready to go to bed. And I started to have just like severe abdominal pain. And I'm like, man, what must have been something I ate at the party. I just had some chicken there. There was no carbs. I just had chicken from a pot roast, just nothing out of the ordinary. And I was in so much pain that I couldn't get to sleep. I took some Alka-Seltzer and stuff, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. Well, I go downstairs and I do an enema, which is pretty, I won't say it's common, but it is fairly common if you have the surgery. Some people will do that because for some people, it does reduce the amount of times you go to the bathroom. I tried to do an enema and literally nothing came out. I mean, like nothing. And that's when I'm like, oh no, like I have a blockage. So we went to the emergency room, finally got in. I'm in just the worst pain of my life, just severe abdominal pain. They finally take me back. The on-call surgeon, he comes in and he says, Chris, we're going to do 2 things. Okay. We're going to put you under, we're going to put you to sleep. 2 things are going to happen. You're going to wake up and the blockage is clear, you're going to be good to go. We send you home, or you're going to wake up with another ileostomy bag. So I'm just like, this isn't real. I mean, this isn't happening. So sure enough, I wake up and I'm like feeling around and I'm like, oh no, I have the bag again. So, I mean, the chances of this happening are like lightning striking twice. It's slim to none. So I had the bag again. Okay, this was last year. This time I have to have it for 5 months, a little over 5 months. So 0 training for 5 months, no cardio, no activity. I lost 40 pounds in the process. This is my 3rd time losing 40 or more pounds from this. And then I do the reversal surgery again. This was last March 25th. And then got to wait 6 weeks so you can train. I start training. And again, I'm back at it. Like I'm on the hunt for the pro card. So that's what essentially brings us into this year.
Does steroids affect any of that?
No.
That's good.
No. Yeah. The first doc, and I've asked several docs, but the first doc, because I asked him, because I didn't know about colitis. I had heard about it, but you know, just like anything, we're like, oh, that's not going to happen to me, right?
Yeah,
that would never happen to me. And you know, he said, he literally looked me in the eye. He said, there is nothing you could have done or taken that would have caused this. He's like, this is something that's either genetic, or he said, sometimes it just happens to people.
Damn.
Yeah.
I know that I believe John Meadows had his colon removed.
Yep.
At one point. Had you ever had any conversations with him or yeah.
Yeah, me and John talked. Yeah, we would kind of go back and forth. I remember it was like a few days after, and he sent me a message and he's like, welcome to the club, man. So yeah. You know, he's always in good spirits. And I mean, just like I was alluding to earlier, like when stuff like this happens, like this severe, you have to like joke about it. Otherwise you're going to be in a bad place.
So this one last year where you're out, you know, 5 months, you know, I just think the typical person listener to this, bodybuilder anyway, like most of us at most have probably only spent a few weeks out of the gym altogether. Like personally, I was out of the gym for 5 weeks after getting my appendix out in 2018. And that's the longest stretch of time I've gone without lifting weights in 20 years. Mm-hmm. So I hear all these layoffs that you've had out of your control. And a question that comes up is like, talk to me about your mental because a lot of us, we need the gym just for sanity. So what's it like? Obviously you're dealing with recovery. That's where your focus is, but you're not even touching weights at this point. What gets you to the next day?
Sure. So, and I'll tell you this too, this kind of fits perfectly. So I actually had my 7th surgery 3 weeks ago. So, and that was to basically, like, you guys know when you have a hernia, it's your intestines, your colon that's pushing up against your stomach wall, right? Well, with no colon, it was basically just my stomach pushing. So like I saw one of my surgeons in January, so he took a look and there was a part basically, and this does happen when you get a bag removed. It is fairly common to either have a hernia or something like that. And I could tell like the wall was open. Like when I breathe, it looked like a puffer fish. You could see like this pocket that was like coming. And I was worried about it. So I went in and she's like, okay, well, we'll see if it gets worse. Well, you guys know with the hard training, like when I saw her last, it was like 5-6 inches across. So the last time I saw her, she's like, oh, this is destroyed. Like we need to fix this. So, but going into your question, I think when people, again, like when they put themselves in that negative mindset or like playing the victim, it's so easy to just spiral from there. I knew with the surgeries, it was just like, it was the perfect time to focus on business, my job, relationships. It was the perfect time to really reset and focusing on other stuff. So I tried to take that negative and say, okay, so I got that on hold. We'll just table that. Now, how can I improve my client base? How can I level up my coaching? How can I be, the best performer at my workplace? And that's essentially what I did to stay busy. I mean, like the first run, I would say, like, I honestly didn't miss it. Like, yeah, of course I miss like feeling jacked and everything or feeling lean, but like I think when you take that focus that a lot of us have that are successful and you put it into other avenues of your life, you find out that, I mean, there is more to life than bodybuilding. I know it's hard coming from me when, this is something that I've chased for 22 years,
Absolutely.
I talk about that all the time. The discipline and the determination and just the ability to like one track mind focus everything you got on bodybuilding. If that does get taken away from you, or you get to a point where you're like, okay, I've got this under control, and you can take that same focus and apply that to, those other outside things other than just bodybuilding. I'm not the only one that's ever said that, but I've seen so many really good bodybuilders only focus on bodybuilding. And I'm like, damn, dude, if you could just take a fraction of that, what you got towards bodybuilding, and put it towards a couple other things, you'd be a dangerous person. And so I love that. I love hearing people say that. I just love that word getting out, because I feel like bodybuilders, meatheads, whatever you want to call them, they get a bad rap because it's like most of them don't have a lot of money. Most of them are scratching by, and the only thing they care about is the gym. It's like, dude, you could take this somewhere. You know what I mean? Yeah. We're not all going to win the Olympia. You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
Let's win something else. One thing I did want to go back to is 2014 Nationals.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about how many people was in that class? Do you remember that?
Yeah, there was 43, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's like 6 call outs.
Yeah.
Or more.
Yeah. It was huge.
It was huge. I can just remember I wasn't in the first call out, second call out. I don't even remember where I was, but like, you're up there in first call out, and it's like, okay, just dying for my number to be called. That first call out, and then you don't, and it's like, oh, your arms kind of come down a little bit, and it's like,
yep.
Second call out gets called, and you're like, yeah, he didn't get that one either. And then by the time I get called, I'm just like, somebody just call my name so I can just be done with this. You know what I mean? Like I feel like everybody's looking at me. You know what I mean?
Yes.
How'd you do that? How'd you do that year?
That year, I think I'd have to look. I was somewhere in the 10 to 12, 10 to 13, I think.
Yeah.
I'd have to really like go back and look. But that one actually, so I won the Iron Games overall in California, and that was 2 weeks prior because I had to qualify. The day after the show, I got insane food poisoning, and having IBS, you're already susceptible to that type of stuff. Yeah. So when I flew home, I literally went from the airport to the hospital. They said you have 2 different strains of food poisoning and borderline rhabdo. And at that point I was like, all right, there's no way I can do the show. They gave me some antibiotics and stuff. And I think after about 4 or 5 days, I was like, all right, I got to try this. So I went to the gym. I had to leave the gym the first day. I'm like, okay, I'm probably not doing nationals. Long story short, I was able to do it last minute, and like surprisingly, I actually looked all right for basically missing a week of training, having food poisoning. But yeah, it was no joke, man. Like you said, like 40 plus guys, all legit,
Something else I wanted to say is Tommy and I talk about this sometimes, but I can remember when I was like in the thick of it, of like chasing a pro card. In my mind, other than winning nationals, I had in my mind a couple shows like a couple of the qualifying shows that I wanted to win. Like those, you knew, it's like you said, you knew that the guy that won that show, like he was going pro at some point. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And Atlantic States was one of the shows that I wanted to win, you know?
Yeah.
And so I can only imagine how you felt and then having that taken away from you. That's, like I said, there was the Atlantic States, the Flex Lewis Classic. There was probably 4 that I wanted to like knock those off. And it's like, you're kind of like gaining market share in different parts of the world. You know what I mean? Like you go win the Atlantic States, you go win a show in California, and then it's kind of like you got your name is out there, and then you go win nationals.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like, I was a nobody from Minnesota. Like, it's bodybuilding is so small up here. Yeah, it's grown, but it's like, I was a nobody. And I mean, even getting backstage at Atlantic States, there was 22 guys, you know, all jack. Like this is a different level than it is today.
Yep.
And, you know, again, remember, I've never placed above, I think, 4th place in 10 years. So I even told my buddy Bill, he told me to do the show with him, and he did it. He did the middles, and I literally said, I'm hoping for top 10, you know? So, you know, it's funny, like, you know, you guys were saying, you know, Tommy was saying, where it's just like, we'll have people come to us and say, I want to turn pro my first shot. You know, it's like, you gotta look at your audience first, and then you have to do your research, and you have to have realistic goals.
If so Atlantic States was your first class win, what was your mindset all the shows you had done before that? Like, because I know a lot of people in today, if like they don't win the first one, maybe they do a second one, maybe you get the oddball who will do, but like a lot of people just give it up and quit. Like they wouldn't take, you know, loss. And like that's what I try to tell people is like, you're going to lose a lot more shows than you win in bodybuilding. That's how it goes. So what was like your mindset those first, you know, until you got that class win? Is it just like you're hungry, the wolf climbing the mountain?
It is. And so I've done 31 shows in total. And again, I was telling people within the last several weeks since I won, I've lost way more shows than I've won. And that it really has to sink in, like you're going to lose a ton of shows, you know? And I just kept trying to get better and trying to get the conditioning down. And like people would tell me too, like I basically turned my weakest point into my strongest, which is conditioning. And people would come up to me locally, and I wouldn't even ask for advice. And they say, man, Santamaria, if you could just nail your condition, if only you'd come in shape and this and that. And I just got so tired of hearing that I said, you know what? I'm going to make this a priority, like even more. I'm going to check all the boxes and make sure I don't miss anything. And I told myself that prep. I didn't tell anyone else, but I literally said, you know what? I've done this for 10 years. I've given a decade with 100% focus, didn't miss anything. No missed meals, no training sessions missed, no time off, no deload weeks. And I'm like, if I can't come in respectable condition, like this is definitely not for me. So again, that was another turning point with Atlantic States, where it's like, if I didn't really nail my conditioning there, I was going to take that drive and do something different with it.
And it worked. You won your class. So do you remember who won the overall that year?
So the pictures are still out there. I mean, in my mind, hey, I won the overall. Pictures don't lie. Videos don't lie. I'm sorry.
Right.
But I can't think of his name now. He doesn't compete anymore. He's like long gone.
Right.
But yeah, if you check the pictures, unbiased, I think you'll see who won.
Yeah.
Did he go on?
Go ahead.
Did he go on to be a pro?
I don't know. Yeah, I can't remember if he did or not. I feel like it's no, but I'm not 100% sure.
Bodybuilding's cool like that because you remember certain years or certain shows. Like the guy that won the overall at my very first show, just got his pro card at North Americans this year. And I think back to like when I saw that dude it was my first time backstage at a show, and I was just like, damn. But to see that it took him another 10 years to get that pro is like, that really puts it into perspective to like, that guy was like, damn to me back then. But at that time, he was just a dude who was good enough to win a very competitive show in Michigan. But, you know, it took him 10 more years of doing pro qualifiers to finally get it. So that I really like following guys for the length of the journey too. And it's like a dude just keeps coming back and coming back and coming back. And, you know, we've had a lot of guys who've, you know, Cade comes to mind of people who just keep showing up until they get their ticket punched.
Yeah, I did listen to that episode. That was a great one with Cade.
Between y'all two, I mean, I haven't, knock on wood, I haven't really faced a lot of adversity like those two things. But those are, I tell Cade all the time, I'm like, man, dude, the amount of injuries that he's had, I'm just like, I don't get it. I don't, again, this is me like talking about what I would do. So I don't know what I would do, but I just feel like that, what you've dealt with and then what he's dealt with, I'm just like, man, I just hang it up and find something else. You know what I mean? but, you know, I don't think that it's like, I asked you that question and really there's never any doubt that you were going to come back. It's just, how are we going to do it? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I know Cade's the same way. I feel like a lot of people just rather lay down and die. Some people had rather just lay down and die than not at least try.
Yeah. There were so many points, you know, where it would have been too easy to just say, you know what, that's it. You know, so many different points. And I mean, through now 7 different surgeries. And yeah, there were some really dark moments, you know, like you alluded to earlier, like, you know, just being in so much pain in the bathroom. And I mean, like, there was times where I'm just like, you know what, if I were to go now, like it might be better, you know?
Right. Okay. So let's fast forward to turning pro at North Americans. Like you get out there 2-3 a day earlier, right?
Yeah.
Walk us through getting there, your carb up, and then the day of the show, and just kind of walk us through that process. And then obviously I want to hear about like post show and all that.
Sure. So, and you guys probably know, I mean, especially you, Turner, like I'm a light heavy. I've always, you know, my Instagram, Chris Santamaria 198, that's where I compete at, right?
Right.
So in 2021, I won the middles. And the reason, I'll tell you why, when you lose your colon, you lose about 8 pounds because the colon weighs about 7.5 to 8 pounds. Now, again, I would never say this is somehow an advantage because I deal with this stuff 365. But when I lost at the Universe, I got 5th place. I've always done poor at that show for whatever reason. I walked off stage. I met my brother and my wife. Before they could say anything, I said, I'm dropping to the middles. I'm going to do it. And they're like, whoa, wait a second here. Like, well, let's think this through. And I said, nope, I'm going to drop. And I said, I'm going to win the middle weights. If I make the weight, no one's going to beat me at that weight. So, you know, I had that extra 8 pounds that would normally be on my body to, you know, some wiggle room to play around with. And that was the only reason it came about, to where I got to my lowest baseline and I was like, man, I'm getting low. Like maybe I can make 176, you know, but like the thought never crossed my mind until I lost. And I was like, that's it. I'm just going to put myself in the best advantage, which again is debatable. I did win, but again, I did the Kuklo this year. They gave me 3rd place and I showed up really good. But after that, I was like, you know, I talked with Stephanie and I'm like, you know, what's going to be the best option? And she's like, you're going to have the best shot if you make the middles. So, you know, I was around 196 on stage. So again, I got to drop 20 pounds to make the class. So right after the show, basically after a couple days, I called it the descent to 176. So, and I knew I had to get within, let's say 7-8 pounds, and then I can basically water manipulate, make the weight, and try to carb up.
Huh.
So that was the same plan. It was tough to do it for Universe. It was really easy to do it for Masters, again, which I got second in the 35 and the 40. And then for North American, same thing. I got in early, and by that point, I had kind of gotten the routine down. So it was, I won't say it was easy, but it was much easier of a process.
Right.
And then, yeah, basically once I hit the weight, it was like right there at the venue, right at, Station Square, I slammed, 50 grams of Carbolin just to get something going, try to wake the body up again. And then basically went to the hotel, and then I alternated between chicken and rice meals or steak and cream of rice, basically, and then some rice thins to load for the show.
All right. What about the day of the show?
So the day of the show has been tricky, and it's been tricky for probably a decade. Yeah, a decade. And it's like anything I eat, it's like as soon as I drink, you guys see those memes where like, as soon as I drink and then your stomach's out to here, like, so it was super light. I think I have it in my logbook, but it's like I had 2 ounces of chicken, and I think I had 15 grams of carbs from rice thins, and that was about it before prejudging.
How was prejudging?
It was good. It was good. Like they kind of waited to move me in the center. So I was kind of like, what is going on here? Like, these guys have seen me 15 times already.
Yeah.
So when they finally did move me into the center, I started to really come alive and really pose like I meant it. And then, even though just feeling confident, I think from just losing so many times, I wasn't sure like it was actually going to happen.
Right. Was it a
So
fluke?
yeah, I mean, like, go back to the hotel, and like I'm not really pumped or anything. I'm just like, until I have the trophy in hand, I don't really get amped up.
Right. What about I mean, D-Day, you get the, they call your name. How's that?
So, like I think a lot of people envision too, like just on with anything, with a job, with winning a state title, I had pictured this a million times. Like this was my dream since I was 18 years old, and even before. But when I was 18, I literally committed my life to chasing this dream, and that's why I had to keep going. It was a dream that I set out for myself, and I didn't think that I could live with myself if I had quit. So, I had envisioned what was going to happen, and like, am I going to lose it on stage? Am I going to scream? Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I think when they called it, I basically was like almost kind of in shock. Like I went out, I smiled, I saw Stephanie, my friend Tim. I saw Mike Lacombe, who's, cheering me on, and I just kind of accepted it. And then I went down the little stairs that they have off stage, and I got the card and I got the trophies, and I set the card down near a chair, and I'm just like, did I just win this? And then like, people were coming up and congratulating and everything, and it still didn't really hit. Like, it was like, how did this happen?
Is that like a blur? Like from the time you got off the stage to whatever the next meal was?
I remember everything like it was yesterday, but I feel like it was almost like blurred, like it's almost like an out of body experience.
Yeah.
Like I can see myself, I can see what I did. I know what I said, I know what I ate, all that stuff, but it was just like it just felt surreal. Like chasing something for 22 years and then finally slaying the dragon. It was like it's hard to accept, you know.
Okay, so something I always like to ask my clients, the day after the show, right? So you've went home, you guys ate, partied, had sex, whatever you did. The next morning when you woke up, as soon as your eyes opened, what was the first thing you thought?
Relief. Yeah. It was like I felt like almost like ball and chain, like the chain had been released. I felt like I got out of prison after a 22-year sentence. And it's like I woke up and I'm like, the biggest goal I had set out for myself personally, I had accomplished. So it was this huge sense of relief and accomplishment and, just excitement from, getting to the kitchen and realizing, you know what? I don't have to do this. I don't have to eat my eggs and my oatmeal or my cream of rice. But you
Yeah.
know what? I want to.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want to go any further than that, but yeah, I do understand that. Cause like some days it's kind of like you don't want to do it. It just happens because it's like routine, right? You're just disciplined. It's burn in, meal one, eat it, cook it, go take your shower, go to work.
Yeah.
So I can imagine what that feels like. Like, it's kind of like post show. I tell all my clients that you're going to go through this where for 16, 20, however many weeks, you're so regimented and burnt into what you're going to do the day after the show. And for about a week, you don't really know what you're waking up for. It's not that you don't know what you're waking up for. You just don't really like, do I go up? Do I go cook my eggs and I eat? Or do I just lay in bed and chill and, enjoy this? Or I don't have to do cardio. Nobody's forcing me to do cardio anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
I definitely understand. Okay, so like now moving forward, what's the next goal? Have you set that? Have you figured that out?
So it's kind of tough. I'm still like, the main thing is like seeing how my stomach looks. I actually, right before you guys, I had a consult with my surgeon again, and she had talked about there's a part on the left side, not where I had the bag, where because of all the surgeries, the skin, like it hangs a little bit. Like it's not the biggest deal, like could I jump on a 212 stage? Sure. But it's kind of one of those self-conscious things where it's like, man, I look at my old pictures and I'm like, I would give anything to look like that again.
Yeah.
So, and I'm always gonna have like I call them like these nasty scars where things are now,
Yeah.
which I'm fine with that. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, if I'm gonna set a goal like that, a big goal, I want to make sure that everything looks at least as good as possible. But like this week was the first week I really got back at the gym. Obviously, I can't go 100% yet. So it'll be a few weeks, but like I'm eating all the meals, like nothing. I haven't missed a beat since the day I won.
I was gonna say, like your scars that you talk about, when you're tanned up and you're lean and all that, are they really that noticeable? I mean, it's probably better for me to ask like your wife versus you, or just look at the because I know how that goes. Like you're gonna be like, of course you can see him. I see him right now. You know what I mean? But like,
Yeah,
it's like I tell some of my girl clients sometimes, like you're not the only girl that's got up there that's got a C-section.
sure.
Like you're not the only girl that was 100 pounds overweight and now she's competing. Like, okay, yes, you are going to be competing against girls that are 22 that they don't have to face that issue. But I think those are some of the things that we just kind of we make a mountain out of a molehill in our head.
Yeah,
especially the sport where it's like, you're under a microscope. You put yourself under a microscope. You know what I mean?
right. Yeah, and I mean, like I'm just so like meticulous about everything with myself, my clients, my pictures. I mean, I have 40,000 pictures on my phone right now,
Yeah, I do
you
too.
know, and so many are of clients and all the shows that I've done and all that stuff. I got a million different albums, and yeah, you know, I looked at them, and you know, the ab and thigh pose it's still pretty good. Like, it's still a pretty good shot. Like, if you're like zoomed in, or if you're, you know, the judges can see that. Is it something where I would lose the pose from? Like, probably not.
Right.
You know,
It can't be much different than the guy that's, you know, Tommy's got a neck tattoo, right? Like Tommy's not losing a pose because of his neck tattoo.
right?
That's
right.
Yeah. I had something I was gonna say, but now I'm just drawing a blank. Hell, I don't know. I've got a bunch of things on my mind. What do you got, Tommy?
Yeah, so I mean, you took us on the journey from, you know, the beginning to the Atlantic States class win to, you know, then all the surgeries. So, you know, turning pro is probably like, I could picture in my, because I have visualized, you know, a lot of the moments you've talked about in my own head, in my own journey. I can picture almost that, like, what that big breath once you got off stage after turning pro looked and felt like. Like, I could visualize the North Americans setup, and I could see it must have just felt like almost like you said, like a weight was just like lifted off your shoulders. Because I mean, 99% of no one in this world goes after something for, you know, 2 decades. They don't stick with it, like, especially in today's day and age. I mean, we're talking about today's bodybuilding scene. Like, when I get a young dude who comes to me like, yeah, I want to be pro, I want to do this, it's all right. All right. Do you have 10 years to give minimum right now? Like, do you want to do this for 10 years? And it's like, all right, let's do show 1 to see if you even get the bug. So how early did you know you had the bug? Was it before you even did a show?
Oh yeah. So my first love was sprinting, you know, track and field. And, you know, one of my idols, Michael Johnson, I started seeing his races and everything. And I'm like, you know, that's where I got the bug, where I'm like, man, that dude is jacked. Like, for a sprinter, like, I want to look something like that. And then, you know, like that Christmas, my dad, he got me, you know, the infamous Arnold Classic Encyclopedia. And I'm flipping through this thing, and I'm like, how is it possible to look like this, like, as a human being? I don't even know how this is possible. And that's when I knew I was hooked. Like, I started training, and I put 100% into track and field, and anything I do in life, it's 100%. I'm all in, you know? So I put 100% into track and field until I knew I had gotten as far as I could. And that's when, you know, my senior year, I didn't run track, and I knew at that point, I'm going to devote everything to bodybuilding. So it's like I was hooked before even really committing everything. I was still trying to build everything to be a power sprinter, but I knew when that candle went out, I knew that it was bodybuilding was up next.
And I think that's the hardest, like, so I know a lot of people, myself included, who've read that Arnold Encyclopedia cover to cover. A lot of us, we all have unique ways of how we found bodybuilding and then chose to pursue it. Whereas today's person, you know, it's 2023. It's a lot more common to know so many different people who've done a show. Oh, my friend did a show. This person did a show. I want to do a show. There's not as much like organic research and finding out if, like, hey man, I'd really like that. Like, I remember some of the first pictures I saw of Jay Cutler where I was just like, I want to do that. I don't know what all that is, but that is what I want to do. And I find that today's competitor, if you can follow all these people on Instagram, you can, I mean, even this podcast could spark somebody to want to start a bodybuilding journey. So I like to hear about the organic stories of how people found bodybuilding, whether it was at an age like you did, or if it's later in life, because a lot of us cemented it in that, like, this is what I'm going to do no matter what. Like, part of my identity the rest of my life is bodybuilder, and I'm going to carry that. So as a coach, you know, where I'm taking this is, do you have what does that mean to you as far as like you've been doing this a long time now? Do you feel like do you have anybody, or do you feel like a mentor to like younger bodybuilders that you try to take under your wing?
I definitely do. Like, you know, I have a lot of good times and a lot of good conversations because, like, I'm 40 now. I don't feel like I'm 40. You know, I still feel like I'm 28 or 30. I feel great, you know, other than like the colitis stuff.
Right.
But like, I do have, I feel like I not only have the responsibility, but I want to be a leader. And that was another big part in completing this chapter is like, listen, I'm no better than anyone else. It's just the mindset. Like I refuse to quit. And I think if people really grasp that and really resonate with that, you could do just about anything you want in life. So like I'll have a lot of conversations, and yeah, there's a good chunk of my team. Like we have 50, 60 clients at any given month. And I'm dealing with a lot of younger people. And it's like, yeah, I do feel like dad. Like, listen, I've been there. Trust me. And you know, one of our slogans we use on a few posts is like, we've made all the mistakes, which means I'm not going to let you make all those stupid mistakes that I did or that my wife did. Like, I know from firsthand experience the stupid shit that we try, the peak week, you know, rolling the dice. Like, I've done it all. And I promise you, like, if you can follow the steps, you're going to be successful.
Absolutely. I call it like the old bull and the young bull. Like I'm training with a kid who's, I think he's 20 at this point, and it's some of the time I'll tell him to do something, or he's like telling me like, hey, let's do another set of that. And I'm like, dude, we don't need another set of that. Like this is first exercise of the workout. We don't need another drop set. Let's go finish the workout. But you know, and I do think that like you're older than I am, but I definitely think the world, or at least the people that you can affect, need that. You know, your little culture, we all need that. The world needs that, because there's a lot of people out here that are preaching the opposite. But something I did ask you, with everything that you've been through, I kind of asked this to everyone. So it's just like, with everything that you've been through and your motto or mantra in life, is there a phrase or a thing that you refer back to? And this is just within yourself, like that when things get hard or you don't want to do it, or, you know, the dark times, like, is there a phrase that you remember, or something that you heard someone said, or something that maybe you have just came up with on your own that you always like replay in your head?
Absolutely. So I actually got a tattoo of it too. So I had a client several years back, and they're just starting out. They're all pumped, you know, like they're all amped up, like most of them typically are. And they're like, hey, Chris, where's my program? Like one of those guys. And after a couple weeks check-in, he asked me, he said, Chris, what do you think of my potential? Like, what do you think? And I said, well, what do you mean? Like, what are your goals? Like, what do you think? He's like, no, like, what do you think? Like, do I have potential? And he did. Like, he was, you know, I would say he's maybe just a little bit above average. And I thought of the quote. It was literally just my quote that I just thought of on the spot. And I said, you know what? I said, you will find your true potential if you choose to never quit. So, and it goes with anything. It goes with, you know, if you're a real estate agent, whatever job you have, if you just keep going, you're going to find out how good you can possibly be. So choose to never quit. It's right there, you know, and that's the thing with it. It applies to every area of life.
100%.
Choose to never quit.
Yeah, I like that. Some people don't have an answer for that, and some people, I mean, like you've created your own, and I really, really like that. I always, for myself, I always just go back to like, be the hardest worker you know. And I mean, not saying I am the hardest worker I know, but like there's this, like, I call it like goat mountain in my head of all the people that I know are working their absolute hardest. And so like in my mind, I'm always trying to like, it's my way of continuing to one up myself when I know that there are other people out there doing that too. You know what I mean? It's just my way of self accountable.
Absolutely.
So that's great. I'm glad you got that. It shows.
Thank
There's
you.
I saw a reel, it was a Nipsey Hussle reel, and it kind of alludes to a lot of what you're talking about. He said his most distinguished quality is that he just never quit. Like he went through every emotion along the journey, but he just never stopped working towards what it was he was working towards. And that's what I gather from your journey is like all the surgeries, all the downtime, all the rehab. It's like was there ever a time where you were just like in your head, you were like, I'm done bodybuilding, and then you got back into it after that thought?
Never.
See, that's powerful to me, that there was never one moment that you can say that like you were going to pack it in. I don't think people realize the magnitude of that with everything you've been through too.
Yeah, I think that, when you start hearing the comments or like, oh my gosh, you have to have another surgery, but it's just like, if you just accept it as like part of the process, like, hey, I want to be a doctor. Okay, I'm going to have to go through 8 years of school, then I'm going to have to get my doctorate, and then I'm going to be a doctor. And that's what essentially the same mentality. It's like, okay, all right, I got to get my colon removed, and then I'm going to be off for 3 months, and then I have a bag and this and that. And it's almost just like I had mapped it out already because I'm like very organized and meticulous. And I just knew I accepted this was part of the process instead of complaining. Hey, this is the hand that I dealt. I got the 7-2 at a poker game, but you know what? I'm going to play this as best as I possibly can. And that's what I've done. And I think if you have to acknowledge what you're dealing with. Yes, I have to get my colon out. Yes, I have to go through all these surgeries, but I'm still going to come out on top, and I think it really goes with anything. If you get in a car crash, okay, all right, I got to call the insurance to fix the car. I got to deal with, like whiplash. Okay. And if you accept that stuff instead of like complain, like, oh, this is the worst day, that's where you go down a dark path.
And that gave me chills, that poker analogy. For those that don't know, a 7-2 is probably the shittiest hand you can have and hold them. So
what's crazy is I've got a buddy, the same thing that I asked you. He's, like I've got this cult leader thing of what I've tried to, the people that I've tried to acknowledge. His is 7 deuce, and it's the exact same thing of what you just said. I feel like kind of everybody's got, everyone should have their own mantra. It's not about like what you're trying to sell. It's just like you should have that. You should live by a code that you will not break, and that's what keeps I'm not going to say a man, but that's what keeps you fighting the fight. Or you could just go work it again, right? Like I always say, if everyone was a hard worker, we wouldn't have anyone to work at the gas stations,
right?
So but yeah, you guys talking about 7-2. I don't know much about poker, but he's got it's called 7 deuce, and that's what that's
cool.
Exactly that. I'm going to play this 7 and this 2 the best I can. And he's been dealt some I'm not gonna say a shitty hand, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I totally get it, man. That's awesome.
You make the most of the hand you're dealt. Definitely I have a lot of respect for you. I mean, this has been an awesome conversation, just getting to know more about you and your journey, and then even just the kind of being able to be nostalgic about when bodybuilding was just bodybuilding and it wasn't all the other divisions. Like Atlantic States, when you hear that show, if you know bodybuilding, you know that Evan Centopani won that show. And that's like,
yes,
we talked about it earlier. Like I used to look at shows that like big name guys won, and I was like, one day I want to do that. Like Easterns comes to mind, or Southern States was one of them. I would travel from wherever to do those shows if it meant, that was going to put me in the best lineup to see how I stood. So I wish we could find, I mean, it's tough because the industry's watered down and there's so many more avenues, and it's great in one aspect, obviously from a money-making process for everybody involved, but that competitive killer instinct has definitely gotten, lost to the wayside in a lot of aspects. You still have the killers out there that like want to win and they want to stand next to the best and put themselves in those situations, but it's a lot few and far between. So I guess one last question I'll ask you is what are like some of the biggest challenges you found in being a leader to today's bodybuilders?
I think the biggest challenge, kind of like, I stated earlier, is I think a lot of clients or just people in general that have reached out, especially recently, they see the outside, and this can apply with anything. They see the outside, they see I'm back to, regular size, how I normally look. They see the muscle, they see some of the success I have, whether it's, let's say, financially or from a coaching standpoint, and they want that. But then it's like, they don't see what goes behind closed doors, right? They don't see the hard work. They don't see me having accidents in the middle of the night. They don't see me having, to go to the bathroom on a regular day. Now it's 20 times a day at least. So they see all this stuff and they're just like, I want to be like Santamaria. I want to be like Chris. I want to be like Stephanie, his wife. But they're not sure if they want to commit to the work. So I feel like I wish most people in anything, whether it's whatever goal you have, I feel like people need to research what it actually means. Like, what's the criteria to turn pro? What are the steps involved? And from there, they create realistic goals. We have a client we got recently. She's been with us a few months, and like, she has a realistic goal to turn pro in 5 years. Like, when do you guys hear that? It's few and far between. And like, that is something I really respect, because she's a hard worker. She's done her research and she's not setting some unattainable goal and expectation from seeing social media and stuff. Like, I want to turn pro on my first pro qualifier. Like, it's possible. I've done it with clients, but it's not realistic for the most part. So
No.
Yeah, I feel like I wish people would do more research before they're out there and they're like, all right, this is my goal.
All right, I got one last thing to add to that question. So
Sure.
just, you take on a new client, young, old, it doesn't matter. And do you preface any part of with your coaching, like, hey, this is who I am, this is what I've been through? Obviously, you said we've made all the mistakes, but when someone's like, hey, coach, look, I couldn't make it to the grocery store, so I just fudged that rice meal with some Cocoa Pebbles. Like, in my opinion, when someone gives me that shit, I'm like, dude, listen, I don't want to fucking hear that shit. But like, what do you say when they're like, well, I don't know that I can do this prep because X, Y, or Z? Like, going through everything that we've talked about, like, I mean, are you like, okay, well, just knock it off, how do you answer a question like that?
I love that
scenario, but I know you've heard it time and time and time again. Like, go to, what do you say?
I say two things. I say overthinkers always lose when it's, you get to, you guys have heard the spreadsheet bodybuilding. Overthinkers always lose. You just need to focus on the day. You need to focus on the work at the task at hand. And I also say all the time, what do you think the overall winner at this show is doing right now?
That's right.
And I asked them, and the follow-up, as I said, do you think they just ate a whole jar of peanut butter like you did? And I said, I'm not trying to be mean or disrespectful, but I said, think about that time. Every time you have a temptation or you don't feel like doing your cardio, what do you think the overall winner or the pro card winner is doing at that sentence?
So you never bring up what you've been through?
Oh yeah, I certainly do. And like, the good thing is that most of my clients, that they have been with me for so long. I had a client that was like complaining that she couldn't eat her food. And I'm like, listen, I have to eat disgusting chicken and rice X amount of times a day with no seasoning at all. And I'm like, you're talking to the wrong person here. Like, I would
Right.
kill to have flavor gang sauces and all these different options. Like, I got to eat this cold ass shit, cold ass fish and rice. But you know what? I do it because I love it. There's
Right.
no way around it.
That's right.
So, and it really hits home for them. And like, they feel bad. And I'm like, no, don't feel bad. I'm just saying there's a lot of options, you know, like we got to think of the positive here and not the negative.
Yeah. I like that overthinkers always lose.
Yes. I've been
And
saying that, dude, for like 15 years.
the overall winner thing, that's always been like, you know, another one of those things of what do you tell yourself? I mean, there's so many days in the gym or so many days eating tilapia with asparagus or whatever. It was like, what's the overall winner going to do? Like, what's he doing right now? I can guarantee he's not bitching about the tilapia he's eating, cold, hot, the goo, whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%.
So
There's that Shelby Starnes interview where he had, you know, when he won his pro card, he said he had little Post-it notes all around his apartment that acronym, what would the overall champion do? And
damn right.
Love
those
it.
little things you do just to keep, like, they call it motivation or call it just like self reminders, you know. I always, in every prep's different for me because you're older, you're wiser, you've got new driving forces, whatever the case is. But I always find little slogans or little mantras or little things I create for myself that maybe I post about them, maybe they become like something I build into my page, but mostly it's just for self, dude. Because it's like after years of doing it, and both you guys can attest to it, like you got to find ways to keep showing up because there's no new foods we're eating. We're all eating the same shit we were, you know, a decade ago or more. So I think working with the younger bodybuilders, as frustrating as it can be at times, because it's like, pump the brakes, Junior, like chill. But it's also like, it can be invigorating because it's like, you know, I got a training partner who's 10 years younger than me, and this kid will do the volume. He'll train 7 days a week and do volume up the ass. And it's like, all right, man, I'll keep up with you. I like that.
Absolutely. That's where I'm at with my kid right now. It's like, I was that young, same kid where I was like, more, come on, what's another set? You know, what's it going to hurt? But one thing I was going to add is she's not a client of mine anymore. She's actually quit competing. She's a Masters women's physique pro, and she's had a pretty rough road with, I can't remember exactly all the things that she had, but she made, and it was just like a little like guide, you know, it's kind of like, this is my prep guide to when I turn pro with some pictures. Here's some training. I posted about it the other day. But it really sparked my mind when I was like, man, like, for instance, one of the things that just is one of the crazy things I used to do. And Tommy and I talked about this last podcast, was like, I think it would be cool if I went and wrote a book of all the things, the little motivations and all the crazy cycles and things that I did. But like, one of the examples would be, you know, when you're 2, 3, 6 weeks out, there were certain preps I would do this, and certain preps I would do other things. But like, instead of saying, all right, we're going to do 15 reps here, in my mind, like, rep 1 was in, rep 2 was A, rep 3 was T, until I spelled nationals. And then like on a drop set, it was like national champion. And so like, I would do that shit over and over and over. And it's just little cues like that where when I saw her write that book and she, you know, shouted me out and all that, and I was like, man, I've got to start making notes of all these things that I did. And then, you know, whether you sell it or you know, however you put it back into the world, like, the world needs stuff like that, because I'm psychotic motherfucker when it came to shit like this. And I know you guys both were too, because we wouldn't be on this podcast together if we weren't. But it's really refreshing when you get to have these conversations with people that, like, I'm not talking a foreign language. You know, everything that you've said, kind of, you'll say a sentence or two and it kind of gives me chill bumps, like Tommy said. And, you know, you're just speaking from the heart, and I'm just like, God damn, you know, that gets me a hard on.
Yeah. Like, one thing too, I'll add, the theme for this one, like the 2021 was like the comeback, like the second comeback. And I had to prove that to myself. I knew that I could, but it's like until everything was said and done, I had to really prove that to myself. And for this year, my theme was against all odds. So I thought about that every single day, because it's like, I've heard it all, what your typical, like, oh, he's never coming back from that.
Yeah.
There's no way he can turn pro. Like he's done competing. Like he's going to be 40. He's had all these surgeries, and it's just like every single day I thought, beat the odds, against every single odd. Because yeah, if you, and I bet on myself, I had a post, like I always bet on myself and I've always won. And it's like, more people need to do that. It doesn't matter what people say. It's up to you to complete your goal, no matter if it's a short term or a long term. And you're always going to go against some of the odds. But I think when you go all in and you go against the odds, it's that much better when you finally achieve it.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, we could keep going for hours, man. Let's save up for a part two.
Yeah,
Definitely. Chris, if you had to put a timeline on a potential pro debut, just to throw one out there, it doesn't have to be a hard commit, but
sure.
What would be that timeline of, like, and maybe there's a show you've had of, like, a show you've always wanted to do when you did turn. I know you've thought about it.
Yeah, it would be 2025. So like my legs need to come up, like you guys. I'm not a delusional person. Like this isn't the best Chris you've ever seen. It was good enough, thankfully, to win, but like, my legs need to come up. I felt like I was great in the upper body, great back. My back double is probably one of my best shots, but they need to come up. And, considering I just had surgery 3 weeks ago, like it's going to take me a few more weeks to really get in the full swing of things. So like, I'm thinking just like time frame, puts me to next year, 2024. And, there's been talk where it kind of would be cool to do a show with my wife. She's in figure. So it will, it's been talked about. That would kind of be a cool way to, either if we continue, or, that would be the final hurrah and then ride off into the sunset. But I would say, if anything, it'd be 2025 would be the earliest.
That's right. Well, you got the preface for that chapter already, for that, what that one will be titled. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming on, man. I'm glad we got to get you on, and I look forward to a second part. So you got anything else, Turner?
No, I'm seriously glad we did it. When when Tommy told me that we're going to get you on, I was like, oh, that's cool, man. I haven't got to like really reflect and talk to Chris in a long time. I know I saw you one time after USA's, but I can't remember back when it was. Probably North Americans or something sometime. But
yeah,
been a long.
Yeah, it's been a while, man. It's good to catch up, and yeah, I definitely appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah.
Keep
So
fighting the good.
for Chris Santamaria, Turner Riddle, I'm Tommy Stiles. This has been another episode of For the Love of the Game, and we're out of here.
See you guys.